Hello, I'm Joseph Barker, and welcome to the Finding Ability podcast. A place where people are able, adaptable, brave, loving, and exceptional. This is a place where we get into deep conversations about how we can make our lives better and how we can make the world a better place. Hello and welcome to Finding Ability. I'm Joseph Barker, and today is one of my dear friends, and has been, I guess, for over a decade. We first met in 2000, I believe, 7. She's a Paralympic swimmer, multiple medal holder. In her career, she's also had some, I believe, world records as well as lots of Canadian records, and was a kind of pioneer on the Canadian team in representing visual impairment and kicking ass at it. Since her career ended in swimming, she moved into being a massage therapist and has been working with people out of her practice in Winnipeg for, I believe, 14 years now. Kirby has also been to a few Burning Men and is a pretty awesome person overall. She's one of those people in my life where I know we'll probably be friends until the end, and then if there is something beyond this life, maybe we'll continue to hang out there. She loves music. She loves people, working with people with people with disability as well as people with abilities, and is a deep thinker and a foundational thinker in a lot of ways. It was because of some conversations that we had over this pandemic experience that I had the courage or the kind of support to create this podcast, and so I thought that it would be the perfect person to do the first interview with. So I hope you enjoy. Over the podcast, we go over a lot of what it is to be abled or disabled, what it means to come into different kinds of awareness of self, of others, interesting thinking patterns, and I think just overall continuing the process of trying to be better and trying to learn. So thank you so much. And we start off with the question of what's the non-for-profit that you're currently working with?
Okay. So originally, like 2 years ago, it started out when a friend of mine, I guess, was having a conversation with one of the wheelchair rugby guys here, and they were talking about having an accessible sport awards in Manitoba because that was something that's like really never been done. We've never honored anyone in accessible sport within like in our own community, right? We always just get included sometimes into other awards, and often as a person with a disability, you'll share your award with an able-bodied person. They'll never just give you the award. They'll give you and an able-bodied athlete the award.
Really? Whoa.
Yeah, it even happens like international, like in Canada as well. Like I remember Chantal Petitclerc was nominated like Canadian Athlete of the Year, and they gave it to her with like Felicia, what is it? The hurdler. Anyways, I can't remember her last name, and I remember Chantal being like they never give two away. It's usually just like one Canadian Athlete of the Year, and all they just couldn't manage giving it to a person with a disability only. And I remember thinking it was really cool, yeah, that Chantal had spoken up about that. And I'm not a big person who's like into award ceremonies, but I understood the idea behind it. So we started out by honoring the founders of accessible sport in Manitoba, which ended up being a really cool thing because really accessible sport in Canada started here in Winnipeg at Deer Lodge Center. They were the first kind of hospital, and now they're more of a care home to have wheelchair sports played at them. And then the Canadian like sports association was kind of started here. It's gonna be end of day brain is like not fully there, and I'm sorry I can't remember the names.
It's okay.
Al, yeah. Anyways, he's actually in our Human Rights Museum here in Winnipeg as a disability advocate. He has since passed away, but his wife accepted the award, and he was the one that got wheelchair basketball into the Pan Am Games in the 70s when they were here in Winnipeg as well.
Woo!
And we honored the founders of blind sports. They're all alive and still here. And the founders of wheelchair rugby, as that was a sport that was originally created here in Winnipeg as well.
Known as murder ball.
Yeah, murder ball. Yeah, so we did that, and then the group that came together ended up being executive directors and presidents of all these provincial sport organizations in Manitoba, as well as like coaches of exclusively accessible sport programs, some Paralympic athletes. And we kind of realized that what was missing is it felt good for all of us to come together as a group and do this thing. We realized that we're missing really like a hub or like a heart of accessible sport in Manitoba. And so that's what we are trying to create. So it's starting out, we've changed our name and we are now Accessible Sport Connection Manitoba. And we want to provide accessible sport for everyone who requires it or wants to participate in sport and recreation. And we really just want to create a community. You know, we're not going to necessarily offer sport programming. We just want to be there and be the place that persons with a disability can go to and be like, hey, I want to be active or I want to do sport. And we're like, yeah, what do you want? Like, let's do this. We'll make this happen for you. Whatever sport, whatever you want, we're going to figure it out. Like, we'll be there with you.
Yeah.
So
that's so exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never, been in a not-for-profit. I'm the vice president, whatever that means, and head of communications. And I am learning as I go, as is most of the group. But I really think, give us a few years and I think we can create a really cool community and really be like in Manitoba too. So I'm excited and nervous.
As you should be, because that internal resistance is probably an indicator that it's important and needed.
Correct.
Awesome. That's so cool. Well, I feel like for myself, but also for like anyone that is listening, like if you could kind of go through maybe briefly like what your kind of like history and what your past is, and like and what it is kind of like in terms of like the Paralympics and being a person with a disability. So however you kind of like to kind of like do that like lowdown, that the lowdown of your life. And like how did you get to a point where now you're like the VP of a non-for-profit helping people with disabilities? Who are you? Do you deserve that kind of a position?
I mean, I'm just like, I feel like I'm just on like the precipice of responsibility, but for now I'm still like lurking in the shadows.
Like a tiefling rogue.
Yeah. Yes, correct. How I work best. Yeah, I think for me, like I was born with my visual impairment. It has not changed in my 36 years of life, thankfully. And as far as like I know, at least. And yeah, my family's super active and into sports, like both my parents. And so they just wanted me to be active as well. That was just a value, something that my family valued. And yeah, there's like a lot of talented athletes, I would say, in my family. Like nobody's, on the national team or Olympic team or anything like that, but good homegrown successful athletes. And so yeah, my parents are like, well, you got to do something. we just want you to be active. So I think I
Mhm.
started out with gymnastics and swimming, and gymnastics wasn't all that inclusive. And, they said that I was going to be like too fat to be a good gymnast when I was 9.
Okay. Wow.
I know. They told my parents, based on my parents' size, and they're like neither of them are overweight, and they're both really short people.
Yeah. Huh.
But yeah, so I think my parents were just really uncomfortable with I don't know, the vibe of what was going on in gymnastics as I got closer to becoming more and more competitive in that sport, and
Mm.
and their unwillingness to adapt to it. But upside, it gave me a really great awareness, like a kinesthetic sense of my own body that I still think I have to this day, and has made me very athletic to have a
Mm.
gymnastics base as a kid. And
Mhm.
then there was swimming, and blind sports here had a swim program, but it was more not very competitive. So my parents put me into club swimming, and Canadian sport, I think in the early days, like the 90s and the early 2000s, and what made Canada a leading country in Paralympic sport was that we were like inclusive. So if you were an athlete with a disability, they would just throw you into the able-bodied programs and do their best to make it accessible to you. And
Mhm.
that, research later on proved that brought a more elite level, athlete, versus like an exclusive program. So that's
Mhm.
kind of the stream that I ended up in. But basically for the Paralympics, I think I went to Olympic trials when I was 15 or 6. No, it was even before that. I guess I would have been 11 or 12.
Mhm.
And I like just missed qualifying either by age, like I wasn't old enough, but I had qualified, or I just missed the qualifying standard by like a few seconds. But that kind of like started something ticking in my head, being, oh, there's something called the Paralympics, and you could do that. So 4 years later, I went again to Olympic and Paralympic trials for swimming, and I qualified for Sydney at 16. And
Woo.
I think I remember there, yeah, they're just like, yeah, you want to go to Australia? And I was like, yes. And like
Oh.
no clue like what that meant until I was literally like, that was my first like outside of Canada basically experience of what like disabled sport looks like in a world stage, like showing up to a pool where hundreds of athletes are with various disabilities is like as far as the eye could see,
Mm.
and same with the athletes village. And it was a pretty big growing experience, I think, for a 16-year-old. I think it was a lot of responsibility and a
Mhm.
lot of independence gained.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then I'm one of those people that like to set goals,
Mhm.
and so and work
Well,
towards them.
what's interesting is like as it like it's not very normal for a 16-year-old to have the kind of like world's tier experience. When you came back and like you had this kind of like you had practiced more independence. Like I know when I was on Team Canada, like my coach and I had training partners here in London. We always did things together. So I never really kind of like had to do things on my own, really. I was always kind of like involved with a group, so it kind of always worked out pretty well. But uh, I would imagine being a 16-year-old and having to like fly across the world and all those things. Like, what was the experience like when you kind of came back from that? And then how did that feel when you were around your peers? Like, did you feel like there was a lot of internal growth um, that you felt that you saw like maybe not happen in people around your own age?
Yeah, I think the things that so like for me, like we weren't the most wealthy family, we weren't in poverty by any means, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that my parents had to, work harder to be able to financially support me as a young athlete. And so it wasn't unheard of for me to have to travel alone. Like they could only
Mm-hmm.
afford the one plane ticket. And then I would, they would, I guess, talk to my coach, and then I would room with like, 3 other adult women,
Mhm.
that are like 17, 18,
Mhm.
that I didn't know, maybe from another club, or that would often
Mhm.
happen. I would just stay with someone else from another club.
Mhm.
And like my mom would literally pack me like food, like, like I couldn't afford to eat out
Mhm.
every meal during like
Mhm.
a 4-day swim meet.
Mhm.
I remember them giving me like, had like going to Victoria when I was like 17, and they gave me like maybe $60 in cash for like
Mhm.
5 or 6 days there. And then like otherwise it was like cup of noodle soups, and like, you know what I mean? Cause like, okay, your
Yeah.
flight, like everything's paid for. Here are all your snacks for the week. This
Yeah.
is maybe enough for like a snack and 2 dinners or
Mhm.
something,
Mhm.
like so I had to learn how to like balance my budget, and how to
Mhm.
set, to buy travel alarm clocks, and
Yep.
how to make sure I hung up my wet swim clothes on my own. And and I'd steal food from the hotel, you know,
Mhm.
continental breakfast.
Yeah, we've all been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, right? And it was just like, I don't know, like you just kind of learn how to hustle, and I had to learn how to either have the guts to ask for help when I was lost in an airport,
Mhm.
or intellectually feel my way through where a sign would be. Like now I can just take my phone out and like zoom in on signs that I can't see, or,
Oh.
like screens of where my next flight's going to be, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But like
Yeah.
in 2000, that wasn't an option. So you
Mhm.
had to learn how to be charming, and ask for help, or suck it up if you didn't have the guts to do that.
Yeah, and like
I
and
guess.
like talk to strangers.
Yeah, like adult strangers, and
Yep.
yeah, I guess all those things that I don't know, I guess most 16-year-olds probably didn't do that. And what that looks like now for me as an athlete is like I don't follow the social norms of
Mhm.
a lot of engaging with humans. Like if I just see someone and I'm like, oh, they look interesting, I'm gonna go say hi.
Yeah. That's like
Like
that
I
that's a
do.
that's a superpower. I feel like I have a similar capacity, but it's due to a comfort in realizing like social engagements aren't typically inherently negative. Like the average
Yeah.
person it isn't programmed to be an asshole. Like actually, like most people, if you engage with them, there's this like warmth of like, oh yeah, human engagement. Oh sweet. Um, I
Yeah.
always feel like jokes fall out of my mouth like before I can even think about anything to say. So like that typically helps out. But
Sorry.
no, it's
I
okay.
was choking on my teeth.
I'm glad that you.
Not COVID.
Whoa! Oh God! Oh God!
Don't die.
It sounds
Yeah, I
like
know everyone's
COVID.
like, oh, you're so brave. And I was like, I don't know if it's a bravery as much as it's just zero fucks about a social norm of engagement. And it's
Mm,
arguable which is better.
totally. Oh
But
man, like I
yeah.
feel like being like a bard, going back to like the D&D realm. It's like being a bard's great if you have like a certain level of like um social skills and like capacity to communicate. It's like so freeing and like I don't think yeah, it's not coming from a place of bravery. It's just like life's just better if you can have conversations
Yeah.
with people.
Yeah. And people are like, how'd you meet that person? And you're like, well,
Yeah,
let me
I made
tell you.
yeah, I made some inappropriate comment and they liked it, and now we're friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I was buying a chicken Caesar salad wrap. And then I saw that they looked at their phone really close like I did. And then I was like, hey, I'm visually impaired too. Do you do sports?
And did they?
Yeah, they do stuff. They knew my counsel, like my team member at Accessible Sport Connection.
Sick.
She's the executive director of blind sports. So we did have
Cool.
like a mutual friend, but Winnipeg's also small like that. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know, life is boring. And I think like what's the worst case scenario if somebody turns down your like you might be reaching out to connect with them, and then their boundary is just like they're disinterested or they don't want to participate, then that's allowed, right? Then they can create that boundary and you're like, good day, person, and you just move along. But
there's
but
7
if you
billion
don't,
others of you. It's fine.
yeah, but if you don't engage, you don't know what you got. Like people always they're like, how do you meet these people, or how did you connect, how did you make that happen, and how did that end up working out for you? And I'm like, I don't know, I just have a really good feel for things. And then if something inspires me to engage with somebody new, and then I kind of file that engagement away into like a certain pile, and because I know that something will happen in my life where I'll have to go digging around in that drawer and be like, oh, this human, and then I pull them out and they're they remember me usually. And then I don't know, and then we continue
and then
along
magic
our
happens.
way. That's the best part about life.
I feel like where I've found some of the most like the most pure levels of joy and just like overall like good vibes and feelings, and how would I say it, like literal like feeling wealthy, not in like I have tons of cash, but like wealthy and like my life feels full, has been from those experiences of like being able to connect with people or connect other people together, and that like that value of like community and creativity and like just like good friendships, all of those things coming together has always been such for me like an empowering, and it's like the best parts of life. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter like, how many guitars I have or how much money I have in the bank, but it's like those moments of
genuine connection.
That's been like some of the best stuff of like everything. And so I love that you also have a similar mindset in the like there's like in your mind these like piles and like kind of like sequences or like sections where like people can kind of be, and it's like, oh, these two people, maybe they should go together. uh I would love to like ask you specifically, because it seems like to me you have a really good like intuition, if you will. So like what you lack in physical vision, maybe you like make up for in like the actual the like internal vision, if that makes sense, or like your kind of like your connection to yourself and to your own kind of feelings is like is heightened. How have you noticed that kind of change, or like how that's kind of like been in your life over these last several years?
I think I've always, like, as far as like a sense of self, it's always like I'm always like somebody who like hangs out in my own head and really like works through a lot of things, I guess. Some things I'm not ready for that I probably should have worked on, and we've all had these problems I've put in like a later pile, but I eventually get to it. But I think like as a young person I read a lot, and I just had all these heroines maybe in books, like and that was what inspired me, like I like read this book called Julie of the Wolves, and it was like about a young indigenous girl who for bad reasons had to leave her home and her family and just went to live out on the land. And I remember still being really inspired by this book. Or like Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the 90s, that character was just like amazing. And same with like Xeno Warrior Princess, or I'm trying to think of other literary books that I read as a kid. I don't know, there was one called like The Wednesday Witch, and she was like a witch that wrote a vacuum cleaner. But like, but all these characters had in common was just like they all talked to themselves, and they all like knew what their values were. And I think I figured that out at a super young age. And then I think being a person with a disability and going to the Paralympics at 16 was like a slap in the face of like, who am I? Because I was able to, up until that point, kind of ignore the piece of me that was disabled and not have to explore that identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I totally just like, I remember kind of a moment of just like sitting with my parents in Sydney, Australia after my first race, and in the stands, and they were waiting to see me. So like, you know, you race, you warm down, you get drug tested, you get interviewed. And by the time I saw them, it was just like an empty pool, and they were the, the last ones there waiting for me. So, and I remember just like sitting with them, and it was just like this like sigh of relief. And, you know, we all kind of probably had different feelings at that point, but yeah,
You did it.
but yeah, we did it. And like, I did it, like the me that I am,
Mhm,
like, you know what I
mhm.
mean? Like, I didn't have to change anything about myself. I didn't have to act in a certain way. Like, it was the actions that brought me to that very spot was me. And I for sure know that maybe people go through their whole lives without having that particular feeling. And so I'm lucky in that
Mhm,
sense, I guess. And
mhm.
then yeah, I just like, I know who I am, and I know my values, and I know some of it is a little like on the edge of chaos. Like, I can lean into that anarchist left wing kind of mentality, and I know that's uncomfortable for some people, but
Mhm.
like, you know, that's like who I am, and I feel like I'm able to always live that like all the time, which
Mm.
I don't know how to say that without sounding like super like uh you know, like influencer cheesy. Just like be who you really are. But it's only cheesy because you see these people saying that, and you know that they've barely even
Done
hit
shit?
like the iceberg. Yeah, like there's that
Yeah,
whole iceberg of like you, and then the whole underneath.
yeah,
Like, i'm I'm the whole iceberg, you know, like I
yeah,
figured it out.
yeah. I like
Yeah.
I remember an experience of when I transitioned from team sports into swimming, which is an individual sport. After like my first swim meet, like the first day of the first swim meet, like when I got home, I was like in this existential like paralysis. Like there was like I could just feel like my brain like morphing and changing because I was so used to training regularly, but then um to not have a team to like work like to compete with, like in a very literal sense, and it's like it's just me. That there was a huge shift of just like, holy fuck, this like high level of accountability and responsibility and awareness and like really increased. And it's something that like I'm not one of those people who like, I don't know, like I really have like a radar for people who are like, trust yourself, other motivational quotes. Like when I started to do this work in the therapeutic yoga realm, um I wanted to create as much long-term and like objectively real change as possible. And that was a kind of seed that was planted when I got back from my first and my only Paralympics. Was like I put all of this time into this very specific activity, and to what end? It might inspire people that I've done this thing, but like there really doesn't seem to be much like long-term positive effect outside of the fact that I'm just like, you know, going fast in the water. And I find that so much of the time, like motivation or like inspirational quotes or just whatever you want to call it, it's like they're great, but are they inspiring action? And I feel like that's a
Yeah,
lot.
can you live it? Yeah.
Yeah. And unless
Right.
people are actually living it, I just don't care. Cause like I don't give a fuck if someone just has like lip service of like, yeah, I'm like super woke, or yeah, I'm like super capable, or like, yeah, it's like I don't care. And I feel like I don't know if everyone has this, but I have this like internal sense of like, is this motherfucker lying? and and like I feel like I don't see those people or talk to those people much anymore, but there was a while where it's like I just felt like so many people were just trying to like prove themselves through their words. And and it's like based upon like lies in some capacity, and it used to be a lot more frustrating for me, and now I just realize like people just want to project a specific kind of persona, or a specific image of who they are, and that's just like, I don't care. Like, I don't care who you want to be, like who are you actually being now. And like, if you want to come to work with me for sessions, or if you want to like do an ice dip or something, like cool, come out and do it, but I don't need to hear like that you want to do it and then never show up. It's just it's an interesting thing. I feel like there's quite a few of those people out there that
Yeah, well,
yeah.
so like I think like as people with disabilities, like we don't really have the choice to be that one dimensional necessarily. Like as soon
Mm.
as I open my eyes in the morning and I wake up, I am disabled.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
like it's just like there's no other option. And so like I can't, you can try, I guess, fighting that. And both of us were born with our disability, so we didn't
Mhm.
have to go through the trauma of becoming disabled. And I've definitely have been around and part of people's lives who have been in traumatic events and become
Mm.
disabled because of them and have to work through that new
Mhm.
identity. But
Mhm.
like I feel like a lot of able-bodied people, like just having this a permanent physical change really forces you to be present or immediate,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
I don't know, like it just facilitates I don't know what the word I'm looking for. Just the character, like you're just the
Like
creation of like you.
like the individuation process.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
like
like I think that's a Carl Jungian concept, but it's like, like becoming self-actualized or something, which really just means like, do you know who the fuck you are? And unless people have like, I don't know, I feel like like some kind of consistent or some kind of challenge, whether it's like consistent or more singular or whatever, I feel like that kind of external pressure helps to catalyze that
yeah.
process.
Yeah, and like
Interesting.
I don't care like if as long as someone's trying to get there. You know what I mean? Like you can definitely see those people where you're like, "Ooh, you mean well.
Yeah.
You're just working on it. Like you're almost there and I can
Yeah.
accept that and that's fine." And then there are definitely individuals where you're just like, "What is happening?"
Bleh, bleh.
Yeah, you're like, "Ooh, you're like you cannot be in my vicinity. That is a
Yeah.
mess. Please do
Yeah.
you."
Yeah. And I'm gonna be over here.
Yeah.
Um, I love that. So you were at your first Paralympics, which was the 2000 Sydney, and then you were
Yep.
and then like the 2004 was Greece or Athens.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, Athens.
how was that kind of quadrennial, that like that 4-year period? From like you being
Um,
16 to 20, I guess. Oh geez, that's a usually a pretty
that
full.
was those are probably like my messiest years because I think
Mm.
they're everyone's
Yeah.
messy years where like I don't know, I think I didn't see myself. I don't think I fit like I felt like I didn't fit the criteria of what an elite Paralympic athlete should be, right?
Mhm.
So I lived in like two worlds. Like on one side, I was like training 30 hours a week and traveling around the world and winning, and I had world records, and you get interviews and you got karting money. There was like that whole life, and then there was the part of me that was like trying to just go to university like normal people my age do, and I had a significant other, and his lifestyle, he was a musician in a rock
Mm.
band and otherwise had like
Mhm.
a 9 to 5, and like that was his friends, they partied and they didn't see me as an athlete, so then I was able to like make poor choices with them, and no one in that group was going to be like, "Hey Kirby, you should stop drinking and go to bed because you have practice in 2 hours. Like,
Oh God.
you know, yeah, I know, like what we used to be able to do when I was
Yeah.
young, but you know,
What?
like
Yeah.
I didn't get that, you know, and it was like balancing two worlds. And you know, like, and I liked like punk and hardcore and like rock music, and like where is that, like there, that doesn't exist. Like I didn't see that
No,
on the
not at all.
Canadian Paralympic swim team. Like there is like
There's
we've talked about, like we have Adam Purdy was like pretty cool. He
yeah.
had like dreadlocks when I met him, and piercings and tattoos.
Yeah,
And he looked like a velociraptor. Like
yeah, he has like literally like Adventure Time art tattoos on his
yeah,
body.
yeah. And like I was like, I think I was shy around Adam for no reason, because he's just like the kindest human. But like,
Yeah.
you know, when you're a teenager and young, like you don't know. And I feel like he was one of those people that he knew who he was very, like,
Mhm.
even before I, you know, at a younger age than I did. Like he seemed really like self-assured, and you know, in retrospect, I probably should have tried to connect more with them when I was younger, but you know, at
Mhm.
least I got to as I got older. But yeah, like I didn't see me. It was like, yeah, it was just two different worlds, like a different, you know, open one door, close the other, you know, like it was just,
Totally.
I was always flipping between the two and trying to
Yeah.
be both.
Yeah. I I I did have a similar experience as well. Like I've always been involved with music and art to a certain capacity. Before this podcast, I was actually recording vocals for my band's second album. Uh
Yeah.
yes, yeah, it's so fun. It's metal, like fantasy metal. So there's like robots and sand seas and other stuff. But it was such
Nice.
a weird like dichotomy growing up of like swim, and that requires like so much time and focus and energy. And then I come home and it's like I'm gonna watch the Lord of the Rings making of documentary, and I'm gonna like write a song about like pyramids and weird stuff. And then you know 5 hours later it's like you know swimming again, and then a few hours after that it's like the weird stuff. And it was such an odd like feeling. It felt like it was tapping into like the two sides of the brain. It's like one is so linear, like swimming is a very linear sport. uh
Literally back
like,
and forth.
yeah,
Just
back and
keep
forth.
swimming. Just keep
Yeah,
swimming.
everything's on a clock, everything's timed. They're even testing like lactate and like levels and heart levels and
Heart rate. Yeah.
yeah, heart rate variability test. It's like, oh, thanks, Shani. So I love you.
Or
um,
like you get 10 seconds apart, you know, like it's just like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah, God, yeah.
just, yeah, too many rules and structure.
Yeah, I remember like by like the last year or two of my swimming career, like because everything is based on a clock, so everything's based upon like 60 like increments of like 60 seconds, and like having like that digital clock, just like seeing like how the interplay of like say 90 seconds times 12, and like how those kind of like weird geometrical patterns start to arise from like time overlapping over top of each other. I was like really into that for a while, just because like there wasn't much else to do other than just like swim and be focused on time.
I did
um
box phase. I had like box shapes for like 50, 100,
mm,
150, you know, 200, 400, 800.
yeah.
I thought,
Yeah.
yeah, that's how I saw it in my head. I don't know, like I could read
Yeah.
it on the board, and then I would just like create the shapes in my head.
Yeah.
And then that was like, that's what I'm doing.
I love it. Love it. Yeah. Like that instantly reminds me of hypoxic sets. Did you guys ever do that much?
I don't know. Like, you mean like holding your breath for a long
Yeah,
time?
so it would be like breathing like every 3 strokes, every 5 strokes, every
Oh
7
yeah.
strokes, every whatever. And like maybe you do like pyramids, like you go from like 3, 5, 7, 11, like maybe no breath for a lap and then go back down
I
again.
cheated. So
No,
yeah,
Kirby.
listen, I can only breathe to the left.
Oh, weird. You're not an
So mine was
omnibrator.
like, No, I don't know how it happened. I even have like a permanent like piriformis blah from it that's just like there and it's not going to change. But like,
Weird.
yeah, like I'll show you one time what my standing posture looks like. It's really funny. But
Interesting.
anyways, yeah, I breathe to the left. 2, 4, 6, 8,
Yeah.
10,
Okay.
whatever.
Yeah.
Left.
I would always breathe to the right.
Oh,
Even like when we
is
would
that
even like when I would like be on like a kickboard, my head would be to the right because it was just so much easier for my body. To go to the left
yeah, is that
was like super awkward. My,
towards the side
uh
of the stump arm?
yes, yeah. It's
Okay.
just so
Okay.
much it was so much easier just to
That
go
makes sense.
nub side. Yeah. And
Yeah.
there was like a while where like Andrew Craven, my coach, and I were like playing with the idea of like me doing like one arm butterfly one arm freestyle. So as opposed to doing like, like left, right, like normal, just doing
Yeah.
like a kind of like composite of like freestyle and butterfly, but just the one arm. And it seemed to work really well. It's just like so weird. Like, we did so much technical drills and so much different, there's already so many strokes. It's like, I don't know if I want to change this whole thing over again. um and that was towards, I think, like the last 2 years of my career. But yeah. So like between 16 and 20 you were a hot mess, and living like a
The
dual
normal
life.
amount of, yeah. I barely
Normal
really
amount.
made like that many, like I'm not a big I don't know, like a big poor choice maker. Like I would like actively participate in my poor choices. Like, does
Mm,
that make sense? Like I would be
yep.
like, graduation. Okay, I'm gonna make out with all those guys in one night. And
Sweet.
haven't done that since. Learned all the bad lessons that you learn from drinking too much
Mm,
Bacardi rum and like,
yep.
making
Oh.
out with your grad date, his best friend, and some hockey player. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and
Mm,
but like I did it once and I planned it. Like, how stupid is that? That's like me. That's the athlete in me. I'm like, all right, I'm planning my poor
yeah.
choice.
I like it. Well, there's like a certain amount
Yeah.
of like intention put into it, which
Yeah.
which I feel like is like really good. Like if it's like if there's like an intentionality or like an awareness of like wanting to get past it, like I don't know, in the times that I've done like plant medicines per se, it's like, oh yeah, I had like a week or two to like plan, and like it had a lot of intention put into it, and and then I like maybe tripped balls for a while and then came back to life and it was fine.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, I feel like there's a lot more power in that as opposed to just kind of like maybe doing it every weekend for a few years. That's probably a lot worse for everybody.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's just like, because on the flip side, I feel like I'm also capable of like participating in immediacy and just like reacting to a moment and being like there and doing stuff, but maybe I
Mm,
don't. Like maybe I've literally thought about every scenario, created a plan, and so when I get to that point in my life, I'm like, all right, I
mm.
already made my mind up whenever I
Yeah.
had this random
Here
thought
we
in my
go.
head 5 years ago. Like,
Perfect. So
yeah.
maybe that's why, like, as your like new position of a VP in a non for profit, you're like kind of freaked out because you haven't planned for like every single scenario yet. Maybe like in like a
Maybe, but I'm
month or
getting
two.
close.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe like a
like
month or
I'm
two,
planning,
you'll like
man.
go you'll go through it all. What
Like
comes to mind
I've
is like
literally
oh,
oh, I was
the
just gonna say I've literally like listened to like I've just been like, yeah, binging information about
yeah.
not for profits.
Yeah, there's so much like after we have this conversation, I'll be spending time with two of my friends, and we met. We were doing it in like a conscious way, like a COVID like whatever precautions, just so that people don't think that we're being like ridiculous or something, coughing into each other's
Yeah.
mouths and all those things.
Yeah.
But we met at Innovation Works, which is run by a non for profit. Innovation Works is a co working space in London, Ontario, and Pillar Non for Profit is a non for profit just helping to support other non for profits and for profits and just kind of like business and the community of like the London, Ontario, kind of southwestern Ontario region. And from my experience, like I've been operating like a for profit for a while, and I've learned so much in just being around that community and those kinds of people. It's awesome. And like, I feel like people could maybe go to university or college for business, but being around people who have been in and around business for their whole lives and have like run everything from for-profits to non-for-profits to social enterprises, which in Ontario, but I think all of Canada is like the kind of intermediary between for-profits and non-for-profits. And it's so cool and so interesting, like um, how they can work and how like impactful they actually can be. And a lot of my friends have actually been like a lot of like my closest friends, because I think that there's just like a lot of shared values and principles, have come from in and around that kind of community, or that kind of social sphere.
Yeah, and I think there's also freedom in like not knowing what you're doing, which I
Mhm.
think is also maybe like part of like my identity as a person with a disability. Is like, I sometimes you don't know, and sometimes you're going to make mistakes, and
Mhm.
but sometimes also not knowing and making mistakes is a good thing, like,
Mhm.
and you have a lot more freedom. You're like, oh well, I mean, I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm still
No.
brand new to this shit.
Yeah, and or they're like, it's usually done this way, and you're like, well, too late now. And then you find out,
Whoopsies.
like, yeah, but then you find out if this new thing works. Like, I think there was like, like 2020 dumpster fire, COVID-19, there's so many questions. And I think like part of my disappointment with so many institutions this year is nobody had the guts to just like to make a mistake, right? Like everyone was just like so scared to do something different. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And they just tried to like be as safe as possible,
Mhm.
and not, make, large changes in their communities, or, and that's like
Mhm.
across every institution, like healthcare, the
Mhm.
economy, our politicians, our schools, like, the ones that were leading were just like, there was nothing new was brought to the table. They were like, oh,
Yeah.
we got to do research and da da da. But there was definitely, I think, opportunity this year to active like be active outside the box and still
Mhm.
save people and help people. And yeah, I think part of what went wrong this year is everyone was just like so scared to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
But also,
Because with
I'm
fear,
not a policymaker.
yeah, like when it
Yeah.
comes into fear, it causes this paralysis, and like it's such a new experience for everybody to go through. And it's like, how do we operate? Like I had to close down my office, and like how am I gonna work with people if like we can't be in a room together? Or like how can I like work on people's bodies if like if I can't touch them to a certain capacity? Or like, with all these precautions, I really, and I'm sure you had a similar experience potentially, of like, is manual therapy a viable career option in a world that's like post COVID? Like I hope
Yeah,
so.
I was
Hope so.
worried. I was
Yeah.
definitely worried, like April, May,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
It
was like,
was,
oh,
it wasn't until July that I was like, okay, like I'm gonna make it work by just kind of expanding what that means, which means like more of like a coach and an educator, as well as, the actual physical work. But really I only saw clients for about 6 weeks before then having to to slow back down again, because now my area is in the red. So we're not in a full
yeah,
lockdown, but it's not far away. So yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting times. And yeah,
yeah. I'm able
lots of
to,
fear.
yeah. And like, I don't know. I was like, okay, like, so I list, like, obviously I'm listening to all the recommendations from like the healthcare industry and my government. Like I'm following everything that I need to possibly follow to be a good citizen. And at the same time, I was like, okay, like I had to go back and be like, what are my values?
Hmm.
Who am I in this situation and what's important to me? So, with my business as a massage therapist, I chose to not really, I did not take on any new clients. I kept the family and the relationships that I had already created in the last
Hmm.
12 years. And it was fantastic, like I think everyone that saw me throughout this year, which was a much smaller number of people than other years, you know, it brought all of us closer
Yeah.
on a different level. Like if I'm going to reflect back, because you know, I'm their massage therapist, so you know, I'm part of their wellness plan and their
Mm-hmm.
self-care. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
human that provides it. And yeah, like, and it was just this like, it's almost like this weird like polyamorous relationship with like me and all my clients and these open conversations. And you know, there's times where I had to straight up check in with people and be like, hey, the words that are coming out of your mouth are scaring me. Do you need to see a professional? You know, like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, should I be calling somebody to come get you and help you take care of you through this? Or
Mm-hmm.
you know, at the same time, people would come in and they'd just straight off say their boundary, like, I don't want to talk about this today. This is how I'm feeling. Done. You know, I want to
Mm-hmm.
listen to this music today. Done. I can do that. Don't
Yeah.
touch this part of me. Cool. Like, I felt like there's a lot more boundary conversations this year, which
Mm.
I think humanity needs. So that was nice to see that, like, I had managed to create a safe space for my clients to like
Mm-hmm.
actually state boundaries and also be honest. So it
Mm-hmm.
was a lot. And like, you know, like I have stuff to work through myself from that this year, but like, but I think overall it's gonna be a good thing once you know, once we all heal from this pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
suck.
I feel
They
like
suck.
yeah, I feel like there's like because of the external pressure of the pandemic on everybody else, it's like illuminated and like brought to awareness so much stuff that's been maybe overlooked for a long time. And like that goes into everything from like Black Lives Matter to just overall conversations about like what does it mean to like you know for mental health and clarity, and like what does like work life balance actually mean. And just I feel like there's been such an opportunity for this time to be used for that cultivation. Whether or not people use it or not is hard to say, because that's an individual thing. But it's been really interesting. And for me, a lot of the most in quotes healing times that I've had, it has been like with other people. Like I've had my own healing experiences with a vision quest and some time alone at the cottage and whatnot. But for people to come back together, and I feel like once this situation is over, the amount of like joy and respect and just love and all of that that's associated with people coming together, like community as a whole, I feel like that's going to be on like a whole other level. In me just like, you know, reaching out to like when we had our first conversation maybe in August, that was just so nice. It's like it
Right.
had been like, you know, weeks or something since I had a conversation that was that awesome and like engaging and enjoyable and just and fun. And so I'm really excited for that to come back. I am a little bit crunched for time, so
That's okay.
so I'm gonna like just I guess ask like one or two more questions, I guess, before it's all done. But
Okay.
like
I'll try to be quick.
so what's the so the organization that you've helped to start, it's the Winnipeg, the
No,
Manitoba.
it's Ask Manitoba. So Accessible Sport Connection Manitoba.
Got
And
it.
we don't even have like our social media up yet, but it will
Mhm.
happen soon. And I'll send it all your way
Yeah.
when we start doing things. But yeah, Accessible Sport Connection Manitoba. That is in the works
Yeah.
and like really soon, like in the new year for sure.
Cool. And like if people like want to like Google search Kirby Cote, you have a Wikipedia page, so you're like pretty much
Yeah.
you're pretty much legit.
My
There's a lot of
Instagram's wide
records.
open too. Like you
Yeah.
can find me on Instagram.
Okay.
Like you can search my name and then I'm, you know, Trash Panda Jiu-Jitsu. Um but that's that alter ego. But yeah, I'm super approachable. That I leave that platform wide open
Okay.
purposefully.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm glad that we started with D&D somehow. And I'm super excited to maybe one day meet Mork, the
Right.
orc that is now a kitty cat.
Yeah. Well, I hope he's not a kitty anymore. You know what he did? He like I think he molested somebody by accident.
Oh my god, bad Morky.
I know. It was bad. She
You
was a lie. No, okay, that's bad.
you,
Me Too
you
moments, but like,
it's okay. Like you probably had a bad roll on a die, and then the DM just made a bad thing happen. I'm sure it wasn't
kinda, yeah,
premeditated. Awesome.
yeah, it
Well,
was a witch.
well, thank you so much, and I'd love to chat again sometime soon.
And thank you so much for listening today. This is Joseph at Finding Ability. The guest today was Kirby Cote, former Canadian Paralympic swimmer, currently a massage therapist operating out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, and is now the VP of Ask Manitoba. We did lose a little bit of the conversation towards the beginning just due to some internet difficulties. Mostly we just talked about how Canva is awesome. Shout out to canva.com for any of your social media needs. And we also talked about D&D way more than I expected. So don't be afraid if you're a little bit of a nerd and maybe conversations with Paralympians might sound a bit intimidating. I assure you, we are as nerdy or maybe even more nerdy than you. And have a great day.